influences here. If you look at the period from 1938 to 1950, there's a spike in our absolute emissions. And this happens to coincide with the operations of US military bases in Trinidad and Tobago. And the thing is that all of the fuel that was used by those aircraft and ships and submarines and so on was attributed to Trinidad and Tobago and not to the United States. Very interesting. If you look at the period when you started to see the gradient change, it's around 1970. It's around that time that you have the first set of plants being put down in Point Lisas, and also around that time that you had the first major jump in oil prices. So you can start looking at the data and what they represent and try to find the significance of these data. Pulled out the data for cement production, and you'll see that it starts going up around 1954. TCL was incorporated and began production in 1954. So again, the data represent and reflect the actual situation on the ground. And cement production, because of its very nature, in terms of the conversion of calcium carbonate, which is limestone, releasing carbon from that, and also in its energy-intensive production methods, is considered to be of great concern in terms of global carbon emissions. But it's also one of the most difficult processes to reduce the carbon footprint, simply because of the way it's made. So let's look at our per capita emission rate against the top 10 absolute emitters. And it should raise your eyebrows a little bit. We're above all of them. Okay? In terms of the metric tons of carbon, we are above the top 10 emitters in the world on a per capita basis. And you look at the chart on the right, the miniature chart. It starts off at roughly 1950 because they had no population estimates prior to that to do the per capita emission estimates. So you see that rise and goes up all the way to 2007. But this should indicate to us that we have an impact on a per capita basis. Again, the argument is always going to be, do we react to that or to the fact that we're ranked 70th in absolute emissions? And here we look at our absolute emissions, again ranked against the top 10 global emitters. Ranked from left to right, again from China, go back to Iran. We put out 10.1 billion metric tons, and China 1.78 billion metric tons. So just a little bit about the whole issue of global warming, some of the science behind it. I'm not going to tarry too long on this. I hope that everyone here has a fair understanding of global warming and what causes it. But it's solar radiation that's reflected and trapped from greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. And the most popular or prevalent greenhouse gases are water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and ozone. Now, water vapor, in terms of anthropogenic GHGs, is not really a major concern for us. We don't generate it, but the carbon dioxide that acts as a global warming agent raises the temperature of the planet, which allows the atmosphere to hold more water vapor. So it's a feedback loop. The carbon connection. Again, we're talking about carbon management and what the private sector can do, but let's make the connection. Carbon dioxide is the most significant anthropogenic greenhouse gas there is. GHGs contribute to global warming, which is a worldwide effect. Global warming is happening on a global scale, and this has been declared as being unequivocal by the scientific community. And global warming is a driver of climate change, which really are localized effects. Okay? So we in Trinidad and Tobago, as a SID, right, small island developing state, we have particular challenges in terms of what is going to happen to us if the effects of global warming result in climate change that cause us to have to adapt or mitigate in serious ways. Continue with the carbon connection. Globally, carbon emissions from fossil fuels and cement production in 2008 were 41% higher than the Kyoto base year. And the Kyoto Protocol, as you know, is under the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, and it established targets to be met by the end of the first commitment period, which is 2012. For the first time, developing countries are now emitting more fossil fuel emissions than developed countries. And tropical deforestation is responsible for about 1.5 gigatons of carbon per year, accounting for about 15% of total carbon emissions from human sources. So it's not just the energy sector. Okay, let's just get this straight. It's not an attempt to focus on the energy sector. Every sector, every major sector in Trinidad and Tobago has a role to play. This table, I'm not sure, I hope it's legible to everyone, but this was adapted from the draft National Climate Change Policy. And again, Mr. Kumar Singh can probably lead you down that path a lot more when he talks about governmental environmental policies. But this is just to show you in terms of the impacts on Trinidad and Tobago. We're not looking at anywhere else. We're looking at Trinidad and Tobago. In areas of agriculture, human